Eid al-Adha. It's a huge celebration, isn't it? Centered on sacrifice.
Absolutely, globally recognized.
But what if that sacrifice, especially in the Ismaili tradition, means something? Well, deeper. Maybe different than the story most of us know.
That's exactly what we're digging into.
You probably know the story right. Prophet Ibrahim, his son, the test of faith.
The classic narrative, yeah.
Today, though, we're doing a deep dive into the Ismaili perspective. And honestly, it's fascinating. It really focuses on Imam.
And offers this spiritual, symbolic angle that might be quite surprising.
It really might.
And to help us explore this, we've got a couple of really insightful sources.
What are we looking at?
There's Eid al-Adha Reflections, the symbolism of sacrifice and the continuity of imamat from Ishki-e Karimi,
Okay.
and also Ismaili interpretation, Tawil, of Al-Adha from Ismaili Gnosis.
Good stuff.
Yeah, they really open up the Ismaili view, focusing on Tawil, that's the inner meaning, the esoteric interpretation.
Right, Tawil.
And also the vital idea of the continuity of imam. It's all connected.
Okay, so let's get right into it then.
Yeah.
Our mission, for this deep dive, it's really to unpack this Ismaili understanding.
Right, the understanding of Ibrahim's sacrifice.
Exactly, and how it connects deeply to the imam's ongoing role.
Trying to find that richer meaning.
That layered meaning, yeah. So maybe we should start with the story most people know.
Sounds good. The familiar one.
Yeah.
Well, the account, it's really powerful, isn't it, from the Quran?
Surah 37, I think?
That's the one. Tells of Ibrahim's dream, this command, to sacrifice his son.
A huge test.
A huge test. And then right at the last moment,
God intervenes.
God intervenes, yeah.
Yeah.
Provides a ram instead.
And that image, the ram, the substitution, that's central for many, right?
Absolutely. That's the core of the story for a lot of people celebrating Eid al-Adha.
But this is where the Ismaili view takes a different path.
A really interesting turn, yeah.
They suggest the command wasn't actually about a physical sacrifice.
Right. Imam Shakir al-Husseini himself talks about needing to grasp the esoteric meanings in the Quran.
Which is key to Ismaili thought generally, isn't it?
Absolutely fundamental. And core to this is the belief that, God wouldn't command the killing of an innocent.
That makes sense. It feels intuitively right.
Doesn't it? And the sources mention a specific verse, about the sanctity of life.
Okay. So that belief really shapes how they interpret this whole event.
It's the foundation. If it wasn't a literal sacrifice, then what was it?
Which brings us to Tawil.
Exactly. Tawil.
Yeah.
It's so central. Think of it as unlocking the inner meaning.
Going beyond the literal words on the page.
Precisely. Moving from the exoteric, the outward, to the esoteric, the inner truth.
Yeah, there's a key figure here, right? Al-Tadi al-Numan.
Oh, absolutely pivotal. Al-Qadi al-Numan, a major Ismaili jurist, a da'i.
A scholar.
A learned scholar, yeah. And his work, Asas al-Tawil, the foundations of esoteric interpretation.
That sounds pretty definitive.
It really is. Both our sources highlight it. He gives us this crucial lens.
So what does he say? How does he read those verses about the sacrifice?
Well, he looks at the verse about the good news of a forbearing boy.
AML.
Right. But Newman sees it not just as news of his birth, but as God hinting that this son was the chosen one.
Chosen for what?
The candidate for the imamate. The one meant to be the imam.
Wow, okay. That changes the meaning right from the start.
It really does.
And what about the dream? I see. I am sacrificing you. How does that fit?
Newman interprets that as Ibrahim establishing the covenant of imamate.
The Mithaq al-Imama.
Exactly. It's about Ibrahim taking that covenant from Ismail, appointing him formally as an imam.
So the sacrifice in the dream wasn't about death.
No, not at all. It was about initiating this sacred role, this spiritual leadership, passing on the responsibility.
Okay, that's a major shift. But then, what about the ram, the great sacrifice that takes Ismail's place?
Another key part of Newman's Tawil. He sees the great sacrifice mentioned later in the Quran.
Yeah.
Not as a literal ram, but symbolizing the appointment of Prophet Isaac.
Isaac. So another appointment.
Yes, but to a different rank. Isaac was appointed to the rank of trustee imamat.
Well, Ismail held a different rank.
Ismail held the foundational rank, the al-Asiyah.
Okay, trustee versus foundational. What's the difference there practically?
Well, the interpretation suggests Ismail's role was more about the inner meaning, the Tawil, maybe keeping things a bit more secret or esoteric.
Holding the core principles.
Kind of like that, yeah. Whereas Isaac's role was more public, teaching, explaining the outward aspects of the faith.
So two different but necessary roles.
Exactly. Both vital, just with different focuses.
That's interesting. And one source mentioned an Arabic saying about a chief protector being the ram of his nation.
Yeah, the Ishki-i-Karimi piece brings that up. It's a great connection.
How does that fit in?
Well, the ram in that saying means leader, protector, the one who safeguards the community and its covenant.
Oh, okay. So the great sacrifice, appointing Isaac.
Could symbolize establishing that visible leadership, the protector role. It complements Ismail's more hidden foundational role.
Makes sense. And the Ismaili Gnosis source mentioned Henry Corbin.
Yes, Corbin adds another layer. He saw Ishmael as holding the secret of the Gnosis.
The deep spiritual wisdom.
Right. And Isaac as more of a veil, representing the outward manifest side.
So similar distinction.
Very similar. Corbin also talks about the Mustakar Imam, the permanent established one, which he links to Ismail.
Okay.
And the Mustali Imam, the temporary trustee, which he links to Isaac, the visible guide.
This whole interpretation really highlights the idea of Imat continuing, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's the thread running through it all.
So how does Ibrahim's story, interpreted this way, connect to that core Ismaili belief in continuity?
Well, understanding the sacrifice as the appointment to imamat, that sets the stage, really. It establishes the principle for Nas.
Nas, the designation of the next imam by the current one.
Exactly. It shows this divinely guided chain of succession right from the beginning.
And we saw this principle quite recently, didn't we, with the Taknashini?
We did. Both sources mention the designation of His Highness Maulana Shah Rahim al-Husseini Hazar Imam by his father, Maulana Shah Karim al-Husseini.
So that act of Nas, it echoes Ibrahim designating Ismail.
That's the parallel, yes. It's seen as the same kind of devotion, following divine guidance to ensure the leadership continues unbroken.
And Ismail's acceptance is important too, right? The sources mention his willing submission.
Crucial. It shows his acceptance of the divine plan, which in this view was his appointment to imamat. It mirrors Ibrahim's own submission.
It's a powerful symmetry.
It is. And the Ishki-i-Karimi source also links this back to Prophet Muhammad designating Imam Ali at Ghadir Khumm.
Right, a foundational event for Shia Muslims.
Exactly. It reinforces this whole idea of designated spiritual leadership throughout history. It's not just an abstract idea. There are these key historical moments.
So Ibrahim and Ismail's symbolic sacrifice connects to this long line of imams. How does that translate to the imam's role today? Is there still a sense of sacrifice?
That's where it becomes very contemporary, very real. The Ismaili tradition sees the imam's ongoing work as a living form of that original sacrifice.
In what way?
Through dedication. Our sources quote Maulana Shah Karim al-Husseini, the 49th imam, speaking about dedicating his entire life.
To the uplift and progress of the Ismailis all over the world.
That's the one. That dedication is the sacrifice in this understanding.
And you see that in action with the AKDN, the Aga Khan Development Network.
Absolutely. The AKDN is like the tangible proof of that commitment. All his work, education, health, culture, economic development.
It's vast.
It's huge. And it shows that ongoing sacrifice of time, energy, focus, not just for the Ismaili community, but for humanity more broadly.
It's service on a massive scale. There was another quote, too, wasn't there? From an interview.
Yes, from 1969. The Imam spoke about the pleasure to dedicate oneself. The French was se consacrer, which can mean to sacrifice oneself.
Ah, interesting nuance.
To such a community. It frames sacrifice not as a burden, but as a joyful commitment.
A willing dedication, echoing Ibrahim and Ismail again.
Precisely. It's that spirit of selfless service.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. The Ismaili view of Eid al-Adha. And it really shifts the focus, doesn't it?
Completely. Away from just the literal story.
Towards this idea of spiritual sacrifice, embodied by the Imam's lifelong dedication.
A dedication rooted in that very first appointment. Ibrahim appointing Ismail, and the continuous chain ensured by Nas.
It gives you a whole new lens, really, for the festival and for understanding the Imam's role.
Definitely. It highlights these big themes, divine guidance, continuity, leadership, and this profound idea of selfless service.
It does make you think, though. How does understanding sacrifice symbolically like this? How does that resonate personally? You know, thinking about leadership or service in our own lives.
That's a great question to ponder. What does that kind of dedication mean? Committing to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. Definitely something to reflect on. A different way to think about sacrifice and purpose.